Here we are for another chat about questions and answers. I have selected 7 more questions from you all, and we're going to chat about them. I hope that you, who made the question, are satisfied with my answer. I will try to be as thorough as possible within the time constraints we have. Shall we get started then? The first question for today is, how do we know which is the best path when we're faced with 2 directions and become afraid? It is natural for fear to always be present in the face of any change in direction, anything new, anything that introduces an unknown element into our lives. There's a way for you to make the right decision, as I have often said. Having a purpose, having a sense of life. From the moment you know, I want to be a more just, more fraternal, more integral, more generous human being, whatever it is that you've said, and that aligns with the idea of good, you can say, this path leads me towards my purpose. That one does not. And when we are certain that a path leads us towards our purpose, we can work through the fear so that it becomes prudence. When we do not have that certainty, fear will keep trying to sabotage us, and with a certain degree of reason, trying to protect us from making a mistake. So, when things align with our values, with the sense of life we consciously choose, always grounded in values, virtues, wisdom, in other words, the human purpose of existence, we learn to transform fear. It becomes a warning of caution, not a stop sign. So, have a sense of life, a clear, humanistic, universal purpose that justifies your existence. This will give you much more confidence to walk the path that leads to this purpose. What else do we have here? Question number 2. How do we overcome our shadows? If you are referring to shadows in the Jungian sense, which is the personal unconscious, the counterpart of our conscious, I only know, as a philosopher, one healthy way to integrate these shadows. Not by trying to force open the door of the personal unconscious, nor by dragging them out by force, but by committing to life, committing to the future. If you have that sense of life we just talked about, if your sense of life aligns with the needs of nature, with the great thermon of the universe, in other words, the evolutionary purpose of the universe, nature endorses your purpose and walks alongside you. And then, if something in that repository is needed, it brings soundly to light. If any tool is needed for you to keep moving forward, it naturally surfaces. Only what you need, nothing more. For example, fairy tales. The prince arrives and commits to saving the princess, who is taken by a dragon. He is just a young lad, sometimes beardless, almost like a teenager. There, on the other side, there is a dragon. But he, acting with complete selflessness, acts out of a sense of justice, out of altruism. He will do it out of a need to commit to what is noble, just, and good. He embarks on a journey that enriches his possibilities. So, he passes through a place, meets an old man, to whom he gives a bit of his water, and in return, he receives a cloak of invisibility or a magic word that grants him doubled power. Whatever it may be, a bird comes, it reveals a secret. He finds his sword engraved in stone. These magical weapons that appear along the hero's journey in every good fairy tale, and even in some myths, are nothing more than your latent powers that emerge along the way. Because you commit to something that is also nature's commitment. It is noble, just, and good. It relates to your sense of life, your humanistic purpose. So, if there is any memory from the past that is in the shadow, in the personal unconscious, and you need it to move forward, life will precisely go there and pick that element, bringing it to the surface in your life. It is a very healthy way, without any forcefulness, without anything that goes against nature. Commit to the future, and nature will retrieve from your past whatever might be useful to you. It will bring to your consciousness whatever tool is necessary for your purpose to reach a successful conclusion. It is the healthiest, most positive, and productive way I know to integrate the shadow. Continuing, we have a third question here. What lecture or book would you recommend to start studying at New Acropolis? Well, if you enroll in the New Acropolis course, There, you will be very well guided. There is a sequence of studies that accompanies each theme. So, for example, you will be guided early on to read a Platonic work or a work by some Stoic. Now, if you are outside of the school and trying to study on your own, I recommend starting specifically with the Latin Stoics, Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. The works are very simple, very easy for you to grasp their meaning, and tremendously useful because they are works designed for a time of crisis. And we are living in a time of crisis. These are very experiential, very practical things. This was the goal of Stoicism, to be a practical tool to enhance human life so that it becomes increasingly more humane. These are works of Latin Stoicism from the three great names of Stoicism, which are Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. What else? Professor, why do we feel lost when we try to lead ourselves consciously? Because we do not exercise consciousness. If we stop to think of how much of our day yesterday, how many minutes do we spend truly conscious? And how often do we get distracted? Have we been swept away by circumstances? You will notice that we spend the day more scattered and unconscious than truly conscious. Like any muscle, when you try to use it without ever having trained it, the initial difficulty will be significant. If we train every day to have our body and mind together, present in everything we do, putting all our attention into what we are doing, we will notice that we will increasingly be able to have longer intervals of conscious use. The ideal is one day, it is the ideal of the wise, a day when we have 24 hours of consciousness. But at this moment, we have to steal moments from the shadow into the light. We have to keep bringing things into the conscious realm. And this comes from practicing consciousness to the fullest of our abilities and gaining time in the light against the shadow. You might know that Eastern tale that says the master was very wise. And they went to ask him how he managed to gather so much wisdom. He replied, simple, when I am peeling an orange, I am peeling an orange. All my mind, all my emotions, all my energy on the orange, on the knife. The peel in what I set out to do, so that I always give the best of myself in each moment. And then you are able to gather the essence, the extract, the elixir, what each moment in life has to teach you. And life is entirely educational. This makes you grow a little each day. This is a highly productive life in the sense of growing as a human being. Learn to exercise for increasingly longer periods of consciousness per day, of being present in your life with body and mind together. What else do we have here? How do we fit into this world? That is also an interesting question. And the answer is quite simple, by accepting your place in it. Every time someone tells me, look, I am trying to learn a bit more, I am trying to grow, that I am becoming a stranger in the nest. My friends do not want to talk to me anymore because my conversation has become too deep. They don't invite me to happy hour anymore. You realize that your friend's position is natural, that yours is not. And you, from the moment you take a stance in life, you have to accept that your place in life is the same as it was before. So maybe you're the buzzkill at happy hour who is no longer interested in that kind of small talk that usually happens in those settings. Everyone is criticizing something, generally things they understand very little about, just for the sake of criticizing, or something along those lines. You are no longer interested in that. Therefore, your presence inhibits the group. So, these people, maybe they don't remember youth at a happy hour anymore. That when they have a deeper need in their lives, for someone who can provide an existential answer, for someone to help them to a crisis, they won't remember the happy hour friends. They will remember you. In other words, you have to choose with great clarity. What do you want to be associated with? What do you want to be remembered for? Notice that when you become someone who starts to have an inner life, who begins to have the enthusiasm of a learner, an interest in growing every day, you will have a type of conversation that won't interest everyone all the time. No one interests everyone all the time. No one wants to talk to the doctor every day, only when they are sick. Who wants to chat with the bakery owner all the time, only when they need some bread? In other words, each person is remembered for the uniqueness that comes from their own identity. You'll be someone who is sought after when someone needs a deeper answer to life, when someone wants to find meaning in their difficulties. And those people who are sought out for this purpose are very rare. Usually, people search a lot for someone like that and they do not find them. And you will be that person. Don't have needs. Don't seek to be loved at any cost or be remembered at any cost. When you accept, not by positioning yourself differently in the world, you will be associated with other things and accept this role. Great. You learned how to position yourself in the world. And by knowing how to position yourself in the world, you understand and have much more reflection, including more temperance, accepting where each person has chosen to be in the world, keeping the necessary proportions with a minimum of ethics, a minimum of dignity. You are capable of interacting with people, respecting their world and their needs. To interact without betraying yourself. Everything in the world is like this. Accept who you are. Embrace your individuality. Put it out into the world. And naturally, the world will open up a specific space for people of this nature. Do not be nostalgic for other places. Accept who you are. Those who need what you are will quickly find their way to you. And there is nothing better than gathering around ideas, but are a little more elevated, ideas that add value, ideas that awaken me in our life. It is wonderful when we find people who find joy in gathering around these things. And the others, do you abandon them? No. But you will be sought out in specific situations for specific needs. And they will thank God for there being someone they can turn to when they have such a need. Not everyone finds this person. Accept yourself, embrace your identity, and naturally, your place in the world opens up. Sixth, do philosophers have religion? Look, there is no decree anywhere in the world that says a philosopher cannot have religion. In fact, I belong to a school of philosophy, and we never ask anyone about that. Now, it will have to be a philosopher with a well-defined religious inclination. Why? From the moment a philosopher, first of all, a philosopher has no gurus. He is a secret of truth wherever it may be found. Secondly, a philosopher does not have any exclusive book that they adhere to. He seeks wisdom wherever it may be. Therefore, if someone tells me there are beautiful things in the Tao Te Ching, off I go. There are beautiful things within the Vedas, off I go. Therefore, if it is a philosopher whose religion allows them the flexibility to explore anything that holds some degree of wisdom, of elevating consciousness, then they are at ease. Now, if there are restrictions such that a person feels somewhat stifled in their ability to seeking wisdom, then they will need to make an adjustment, find their place. It is a personal matter. It depends on each individual. Because if he says, I am not going to seek truth in Egypt, where they were animal worshippers, besides being prejudiced, he will no longer be a philosopher. The true philosopher seeks wisdom across time, across the world, and does not accept barriers of prejudice. He can even exclude some things and should as a post-concept. That is, I got to know this, recognize that this truly doesn't align with my values, isn't coherent with what I believe and what I am striving to understand. It did not seem to me to be something endowed with coherence. Yes, rejecting as a post-concept is a necessity. Just like our digestive system, it rejects. We do not put just anything in our mouths. We make a choice to accept some and reject others. Otherwise, we are subject to intoxication. It can even be fatal, but not a priori, not as a preconception. He goes seeking wisdom. If he finds a religious body that is broad and flexible enough to allow him that, great. A very healthy coexistence without any issues. Definitely, no one within philosophy is going to tell you not to be religious. Now, you have to respect the assumptions of a wisdom seeker. And to seek them, you will need to have a religious framework that supports this quest. Finally, is there any class on the Epic of Gilgamesh? I hope to do it someday because I have a great love for that story. I find it truly beautiful. There is on my poetry blog a poem called Gilgamesh. I crafted it exactly as a philosophical reflection on this very ancient story, a historical document, the oldest written one. As far as I know, it had been found, and of mythical and fantastic beauty. Therefore, for those who enjoy poems, I have a poem on Lucia, HGA, blogspot.com, whose name is Gilgamesh. But there will definitely be a lecture on this someday, because it is really worth it. Well, for today, we will stop here. I hope the answers have satisfied your concerns and that they generate good reflection. And let's continue. As long as there are questions, I will be here. A big hug to everyone.